Topics in supply and demand. Next topic here. The incidence of a tax. When you impose a tax out in your economy, you impose it on a given person, does he or she necessarily pay all of it? Or do they in some way try to avoid it or pass it along to someone else? The answer is obviously yes, they try. Here's our example. It's a fairly narrow example, but it illustrates the point. We're going to impose a tax on a product that normally sells for $5. And we're going to impose a tax on it, the government is, of $1 per unit that must be paid by the seller. All right? He normally would sell it for $5. Now he's been told every time you sell one, send $1 in tax to the government, state government, whatever. What's going to happen as a result? Well, take a look at the graph with me. Here's where we're starting, point A. We're starting out at a price of $5, and normally the seller sells 100 units. He's facing a normal negative slope demand curve. What he would like to do is pass on all of that tax. And in fact, what does the tax represent to him? It's another cost of doing business, what we call in most of our textbooks a cost of production. So what happens when the cost of production for this seller increases? His supply curve shifts to the right. And in this case, we say his supply curve shifts vertically. Did I say to the right? To the left. His supply curve shifts to the left, but in fact it shifts vertically by the amount of the tax. So take a look here. His supply curve is going to shift vertically by the amount of the tax. This distance is the $1 tax. So we've illustrated over here, for the same quantity, instead of getting $5, he now wants to get $6. But he's got a demand curve he's looking at, and so when his new supply curve shifts to the left or shifts vertically by the amount of the tax, what happens? His equilibrium doesn't go up here, his equilibrium goes over here. That is, the new equilibrium price doesn't jump by $1. It jumps here by, we're going to say, 60 cents. So the new equilibrium price is $5.60, and as a result of the higher price, he's selling fewer units. He's only selling 90 units. So do you see what's happened? Well, let's take a look at this. The tax was $1 per unit. So, how much of that tax is the seller going to have to pay? Now, he's got to send the state government $1 per unit. But what happened? He raised the price to the sellers by 60 cents. So the increase in the price to the buyer, the increase in the price to the buyer is 60 cents. So he's only going to be paying an extra 40 cents to make up that entire $1 of tax. We look at it this way. The change in the equilibrium price, this distance here, the change in the equilibrium price is paid by the buyer. The rest of it, the 40 cents, the amount up here, is paid by the seller. All right? And, by the way, he only sells 90 units, so he pays $90 in tax. Of that $90, how much of it was paid by the buyer? 60 cents per unit times 90. Okay? $54 paid by the buyer. The remaining $36 paid by the seller. The concept's not real difficult. Bear with me here for a minute, and let's look at what happens when the seller is looking at a demand curve that is either very steep, what we call inelastic, or if he's looking at a demand curve that's very flat, what we'll call elastic. We'll do those two examples here in a second.